What's up, Athians? It's the Cause at Midnight Lights Gaming, and I'm excited to bring you my first tips video for Forspoken. This is 15 essential combat tips where I really try and focus on what will actually make you better and don't focus too much on obvious stuff that you probably learned right away. Now, some channel updates real quick is I'm in my push to 1,000 subs. The second I make a single dime from any video, anywhere, half of it's going to go to a charity we choose as a subscriber community every month. So I couldn't be more excited about that. Like and subscribe if this does anything for you, and let's get into it. All right, let's go over some of the basics, just some in case you missed it kind of stuff real quick. Starting with the 4 kinds of attacks. You've got your base magic, your attack spells, your support spells, and your surge magic. Base magic is just tapping R2. This is good for quick hits, especially while you're figuring enemies out. Attack spells take a bit longer. That's holding R2 and are good when you have a bogey's timing down and have enough time and space to do it. Now, support spells can be launched by tapping L2 or holding to charge it. More tips on that later. Surge magic requires the most amount of time. It's pressing L2 and R2 again. You can press it to do it pretty quick, press them together to do it pretty quickly, or hold them to charge it up. Now, let's talk about scouting and vulnerabilities. When you press up, the up arrow on the D-pad on PS5, you do a cuff scan, which then allows you to press up again to scout a bogey. When you do this, pay close attention to which magic has up and down arrows. Up means vulnerable, down means don't use that kind of magic. You can see this is the demo, so we just have 2 kinds of magic. Also note that sometimes in the notes, there's important stuff in there, like this particular bogey is immune to poison. Sometimes it'll give you tips like don't attack straight from the front or you'll be punished. So it's good, and definitely pay attention to what Cuff has to say. Now, once you figure out their vulnerabilities, you want to use the kind of magic that is going to do the most damage, obviously. So you've got 2 kinds of magic in the demo. You can, and there's 4 in the full game, but you can press left and right on the D-pad or swipe left or right on the touchpad in order to quickly change your magic. But you just want to make sure, as you get to know the enemies, you're using what they're vulnerable to. Now let's talk about basic magic combos. This is pretty cool, actually. It's not something I've heard a lot of other people talk about. You can press R2 and do your base magic 4 times, and on the 4th hit, or the 4th rock blast, or whatever magic it is, it does some extra added damage. So when you complete a combo, like you're gonna see me do here, it will do, there's 1 attack, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then that last one you can see kind of sometimes knocks them down and gives you a chance to do a killer blow. So just note that you don't always have to do a 4-hit combo, obviously, but it's really good to know this because when you do it, that 4th attack does a good bit of damage. Next is supercharged. This tip is all about how you can hold R2 and or L2 to charge your spells. And it's really important to get used to doing this because the more charge, the more damage. But also, while you're charging, you're quite vulnerable. So you do want to get used to that, but it's important to know that for your support spells, your L2s, your attack spells, your R2s, and your surge magic, which is L2 and R2 at the same time, you can charge, I'm pretty sure, all of those attacks. If I'm not right, let me know in the comments. But so just the important thing though is that when you're taking on bosses in particular, I would really recommend waiting until you've scouted them, you kind of know their timing a little bit, and then wait to do a charged attack until right after they attack you. Because if you do a charged attack when you just kind of have any second here or there, you're gonna find that it feels like the AI knows when you're charging. So just keep that in mind. Let's talk about how to take on bigger groups. Now, big groups, you want to start by staying on the periphery and trying to thin them out. So ranged attacks can really help with that, but you just kind of want to parkour around, be patient, look around for those stragglers, and just go pick on them. And the big thing I'll say is that you don't want to go into the thick of it, into the heart of all of them, unless it's to use attack magic, particularly surge magic, or something with the big arc of attack. And then after you use that, you want to get the hell out of there. In hard mode in particular, I found that if you run into the thick of it, you're going to get hurt. Now let's talk about targeting and auto-locking, which is also important for big groups. Now there is an auto-target function in here. I'm going to go through settings at the end, but you know you're auto-targeted onto something when you see a little yellow circle on one of the bogeys. And that's really great because it kind of means as you're running around, parkouring around, if you hit R2 and do some basic magic, you're probably going to hit something. Now I find no matter what, even if you don't see that yellow circle, you're going to end up hitting something. Now, target lock is really important when you thin things out or you're only down to a few enemies, or, you know, you can see these ranged attacks kind of help. That's pressing R3. That's what gets you those purple arrows targeting. And they've really done well to improve the targeting of this game, and I'm a big fan of all the different targeting. Again, you want to use that targeting when you've thinned out bigger groups or against a boss, just to kind of keep your focus on them, keep the camera focused on them. Next is you want to open up their side and back and do attacks. So you get buffs for doing damage when hitting a bogey on the side, and even more for hitting them in the back. And you know this because it's indicated by those yellow numbers. Now you can see the game likes it too from the indicators on the right hand side of the screen that help you kind of understand what's improving your score or what's making your score worse. You can even have fun using different support spells to set up back attacks. And that's really important because ultimately it's the combination of the spells you use that not only give you a bigger grade, but are just going to help you do some damage. So you can see that spell kind of ties them down to the ground, and then you just want to get to their back and do it. The even better thing is to wait to an attack when you see their back, and then use the spell that sort of wraps them up, just like this here. We are cruising, y'all. Knockdowns and killer blows. So in Forspoken, certain attacks will knock down a bogey, and when they're knocked down, you can press triangle and do a killer blow. This is a really important part of attacking combat and knocking bogeys down so you can do these killer blows. Generally, charged attack spells and your 4-hit base magic combos will are good to kind of stagger or do the kind of damage that knocks a bogey down. Another that's really effective for some bogeys is using base magic while parkouring nearby. I find it most effective to run right by a bogey, then aiming the joystick back at the bogey, and then hitting R2. This kind of does a run past them and then a really sharp redirection stab that I find knocks down some of the weaker enemies really, really well. Next tip is first strike. There is no stealth that I know of. I haven't played the full game yet, but you do get damage bonuses for attacking bogeys before they notice you. You'll know that you did this because it will say so right when you where that bogey is when you attack them. Doing so can sometimes instantly knock the bogey down, and you can perform a killer blow as well, which is really great. Our next tip is an airborne attack. Getting airborne and then striking, and then there's sometimes an even follow-up strike is what this tip is all about. There are a few situations where you can attack to do some extra damage. One is attacking while magic parkouring on the ground, more on that later, and the other is attacking while you're airborne. If you hold R2 as you're airborne, it will do an attack that does some extra damage. Now, if you hold R2 for that attack, when you land, you might find that you have a fully charged attack spell ready to go, baby. So make sure you're ready and know that when you attack out of the air, you're gonna do some good extra damage. There are all kinds of ways to get airborne, even parkouring straight up into a wall. My favorite, though, is to do a last-minute evade with circle, which makes you airborne every time, and to attack right when you land. Next is finding that rhythm. So finding that rhythm and timing is really important, particularly because holding R2 makes you vulnerable. And like I said, the AI, particularly in hard mode, seems to know when you're charging an attack and sees that as an opportunity to go get you. So for the tougher bosses and fights in the game, you want to try to focus on charging your spells right after an attack. So you can see here against this bear/saber-tooth that after the bear/saber-tooth does an attack, that's when I really try and hold R2 to charge my attack to get a more powerful attack in there. Next is dodge roll. Quite simply, this is to help you with your rhythm. If you're holding R2 and you see an attack coming, you can press circle, and then if you let go of R2 in the air, for some spells, it will do some pretty special kind of hard-hitting magic, which is really great. So keep holding R2, then press and hold circle. This will put you into a dodge roll that will kick you up into the air. Then when you let go of R2, there's typically a nice attack spell waiting for you. All right, our next tip is good grades. This is all about how to get good ratings, because you get graded for every fight, every skirmish, every time you swing that sword against a bogey. So a star is the best grade, E is the worst. Not sure where that system comes from, but my top tips for you are don't take damage. That's the biggest one. It's frustrating because that really is the biggest difference maker. And in hard mode, it's so abundantly clear that, you know, you're going to get a worse grade the second you take damage. So also note that I'm pretty sure you get better grades for, in fact, I know, for harder difficulties. So it balances out. If you do a counter or precision counter, which I'll get to in a second, that will get you some health back and prevent your score from dropping too significantly. Other than that, my tips are mix it up, use your attack skills, mix in parkour, and pay attention to the notifications on the right, especially early on, because that's what tells you what you're doing that helps you get a better score. So you can see here, Killer Blow helps your score, using support magic helps your score, and mixing it up is a big part of that. Now let's talk about the best defense, and really my biggest tip for this game. Defense is all about evading and using magic parkour. This is your circle button on PS5. It's my biggest tip for being great at this game, and also this is where you really can look good with your combat. And you need to understand that defense in Forspoken is all about moving. There are two primary movements that will help you get great and not taking damage and look really good in the process with smooth flow to your combat. So number one is evade, or just pressing circle. You can do this as a last minute and it will typically catapult you into the air, opening up all kinds of attacking options. Number two, magic parkouring or holding circle. This can get you out of a jam quick. It can be used to parkour around, to reset and set up your next attack. And when you attack out of magic parkour, it can do some devastating damage and close distance very quickly. Now, the reason this helps with your style and flow is as you're magic parkouring around, you might magic parkour right into the bogey, and that will launch you into the air. You might launch off of a nearby rock or tree, or if there are a lot of buildings around, you can magic parkour up those. Get in the air and be creative with your attacks. Next, let's talk about precision countering. There are two kinds of counters. There's a counter and a precision counter. This is an important aspect of defense, these cuff counters. There's no real blocking in the game. Cuff blocks for you automatically, and when cuff does that, it just means less damage, not no damage. So you can get some health back and do some damage to bogeys by using counters, which is pressing triangle when you get hit. If you do it after a very slight delay, it will do a counter that does damage to nearby bogeys. But if you press triangle right as you get hit, Frey and Cuff will do a precision counter, which does damage to nearby bogeys, and Frey chucks a magic shard. Let's talk now about when you're vulnerable and when you're invulnerable. I'm still learning about this, so definitely put any insights you have in the comments. You seem to be vulnerable when casting spells, particularly Surge Magic. Surge Magic, of course, while you're charging it and while you're deploying it, you're quite vulnerable, so just be careful with that. If there are a lot of enemies, I don't typically charge my Surge Magic. Now, you seem to be invulnerable when evading, which is just tapping circle, and also when you do killer blows. That's when you seem to be invulnerable. Bonus tip for you is, let me show you some of the settings I use. So this is typically what I use: hard with significant increase. I'll probably just do hard, but default damage. The thing I really want to highlight is automatic support spell switching. That is a must for me. It means you don't have to go into your spells every time you want to switch your support spells. It will change it automatically. Don't do auto evade. It's basically cheating. Some of those are cheats in my mind. Trigger infect intensity, turn that off. Do your wrist and your carpal tunnel a favor by not doing that. Spell switching menu display, I have on hold. Magic parkour sprinting, I have on default. Toggle was not great for me. Leap and soar semi-auto is a must. It means when you run into any structure, you'll just run straight up of it. You don't have to press circle every time. So those are the big ones. Like and subscribe if this did anything to you. I'm in my push to 1,000 subs and really appreciate it. Take care, y'all.